The boat had left the dock nearly an hour ago. To be honest, I was starting to feel tense. The moonlight reflected off the eerily calm sea, the three boats drifting like shadows on a massive black mirror, endless and cold. Eventually, I found a chance to speak privately with Professor Vane about the lingering questions from earlier that day. We stood at the bow. The waves lapped softly against the hull, and the moon's light stretched across the water like a silver wound. The professor seemed to have already anticipated my thoughts. "I was born on these islands," he began, voice steady. "My family carries a mission, not shipbuilding in the traditional sense. Long before my grandfather's time, they began building a vessel. They believed a day would come when the tide would rise and swallow the entire archipelago, and that ship would save whoever remained." I paused for a moment. "That sounds a bit much," I said. "Even if both polar caps melted, it wouldn't drown all these islands. And where is this ship now?" Professor Vane gave a quiet laugh, eyes drifting toward the distant mountain peaks. "You remember the house we stayed at on the mountain? From within, there's a small passage. It leads down into a hidden cavern deep inside the rock. The ship rests there, a secret handed down through generations." My eyes widened. If that were true, it would be explosive. A massive vessel, quietly built beneath the mountains over hundreds of years. "But clearly sea levels won't rise that high," I murmured. "Maybe this is all just superstition, an entire village lost in old rites and ancient rituals." Professor Vane nodded. "You're partially right," he said. "Rejecting the modern world, scarce food, disease spreading, the village population has dropped sharply since I was a boy." We stood in silence for a while. I realized maybe he wasn't as crazy as I'd assumed. Beneath that worn, indifferent exterior, there was something that made me believe. Professor Vane genuinely wanted to save them. "You want to convince them to leave this place?" I asked. He didn't answer directly, but the slight nod was enough to understand. The boatmaker stepped out from the sleeping quarters. Vane glanced at me, then turned away, leaving me alone at the bow, with nothing but the still, glass-like sea and the quiet moon hanging low above it. I was just about to head back inside when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned. It was the young man in the life vest. I hadn't noticed when he'd boarded, maybe while I was dozing off at the dock. His clothes were still stained with dirt, looked like he came straight from the mountains to the boat. Out of instinct, I stepped half a pace back, but he didn't come closer. He just stood there a few meters away, his shoulders hunched against the night breeze. After a while, he bowed slightly. Awkward but sincere. I let out a quiet breath. "So, not revenge," I bowed back. "Yesterday wasn't entirely his fault either." We shook hands. Peace, finally. That's also when I learned his name, Kylo. Then he thanked me for helping the little boy. I simply nodded, said it was the right thing to do. I asked about the landslide. Kylo's face sank. He said they managed to recover only a small portion. The rest was buried too deep beneath the rocks and mud. He added they couldn't mobilize the entire village. If word got out, people would panic. I asked, "Where exactly are we headed this time?" Kylo hesitated for a moment, then said, "A large reef, full of fish." Before I could ask more, the boat suddenly picked up speed, cutting the conversation short. I looked ahead. The three boats had drifted into what looked like a silver ribbon, or more accurately, a glowing current, lit by bioluminescent plankton shimmering beneath the moonlight. The sight took my breath away. I snapped a few photos. Who knows, maybe one day this place would become a famous tourist destination. The current pushed us forward at increasing speed. When I looked back, the islands had vanished into the dark. We resumed our conversation. Kylo explained, the reef ahead was huge, full of marine life, but surrounded by whirlpools, extremely dangerous. The elders had long forbidden anyone from going there. But now they had no other choice. He said the current looped around the reef. If we followed it precisely, we could avoid the whirlpools. The problem was the current only became visible under moonlight, when the plankton glowed. Kylo left to prepare something. The next person to approach me was the boatmaker. She stepped close and spoke quietly. "I don't know what Vane has told you, but never trust him." Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me alone with that tangled thought. I yawned, a little tired. In the distance above the sea, a cluster of jagged rocks slowly emerged, and then a strange sensation washed over me. like I had been here before. The 3 boats spread out to begin fishing. On the reef, I was with Professor Vane, the boatmaker, and Kalo. No one spoke. Vane knelt on the stone, placing his hand gently on the black surface, like touching something sacred. The boatmaker stood perfectly still, eyes locked on some unseen point at the edge of the horizon. Kalo kept looking down into the water around the reef, as if something was hiding beneath. I sat down, took a few photos, then lowered my head to examine the stone beneath my feet. Grooves rippled across the surface like massive fingerprints, twisting, overlapping, covering everything. It felt like I was standing atop the fossilized remains of something once alive. I moved to the edge and looked down into the black water. The glowing plankton painted the sea silver, but just beneath that shimmer was a thick darkness. And something else. A pressure. Nameless. Heavy. I instinctively stepped back. Professor Vane approached, brushing his fingers along the rough stone as if caressing a long-lost lover. "If we had proper equipment and manpower," he murmured, "I could conduct a thorough survey. But we only have a few hours under the moonlight." I asked, half joking, "Aren't we just standing on a reef in the middle of the ocean? We must be dozens of miles from shore. The seafloor here has to be thousands of meters down, right?" The professor smiled, but it was the kind of smile that comes before saying something no one wants to hear. "You think this is a reef? No. This is the peak of a vertical stone pillar, one of many. They rise from the depths like ancient towers, and based on early surveys, they're not natural. They were built." My mouth opened, but no words came. He went on, "The waters around here are the outer rim of an undocumented gyro chain, remnants of a volcanic range that once rose above sea level, and atop that range, someone built this. The geological slope here is almost impossible. Just a few kilometers offshore, the depth plunges from shallow coastal shelves to 3, 5, even 6,000 meters. Where we're standing right now is suspended above an abyss." I swallowed hard, stamped my foot, twice. What I was standing on wasn't a reef. It was the shattered crown of a structure that once rose higher than any skyscraper, built in the heart of the ocean by hands that did not belong to this world. Then I remembered. That feeling of déjà vu. On my first night on the island, I had a nightmare. I couldn't remember every detail, but the stone pillars in that dream looked just like these, except back then something had been following me. Luckily, not this time. A few hours later, the 3 boats regrouped. Everyone's faces were lit with relief. I heard them tallying, 3 full holds of fish. If processed carefully and rationed wisely, this haul could buy the village time to restart farming and livestock. Seeing their joy, I felt it too, though I couldn't help but feel guilty for not being more useful. Still, once I'm back in Hawaii with a camera full of breaking news, I'll ask the editorial team for an advance. Use the money to buy a few hundred chicks, maybe some Tylenol too. I was planning to stay here long-term anyway, and earning the villagers' trust could make things a whole lot smoother. Suddenly, a strong wind swept over us. It carried the scent of salt, rot, and distant storms, like decayed seaweed and something much older. For the first time, I saw the boatmaker look afraid. The cheerful atmosphere collapsed instantly. No one said a word, but all 3 ships started their engines. We followed the glowing current around the reef. I turned and looked toward the horizon. A massive black cloud was rolling in, shaped like an overturned seashell. Lightning flickered inside it, and a deep rumble echoed, like something enormous awakening beneath the ocean. The stars began to vanish. Even the moon was swallowed by the clouds. The storm surged behind us, furious, snapping at the sky like teeth. It devoured the reef, pulling the silver sea into a curtain of black. In a bolt of lightning, I saw shadows slicing through the water behind us. They weren't waves. Something was chasing us. All 3 boats pushed their engines to the limit. But I knew the storm would catch us. It was only a matter of time. The moon vanished completely, the silver current faded, the glowing plankton disappeared, taking the last traces of light with it. A creeping chill spread through my chest. I shivered and rushed to the stern. Just then, the boatmaker screamed something toward Professor Vane. The wind swallowed most of her words, but I caught 2. "Start it!" They'd prepared for this. Our boat suddenly slowed. Vane pulled out a small knife, sliced into his palm, and let his blood drip into the sea. The drops scattered in the wind, thick and coppery in the salt air. Kalo and a few others carried out small metal drums, pouring a thick liquid overboard. A sharp chemical stench rose, then they lit it. Green fire erupted. Not ordinary fire, it burned on water, no heat, no smoke, just this unholy glow. The other boats were doing the same. Within moments, a ring of green fire encircled us, like a glowing seal on the sea. I stood frozen, no idea what was happening. But one thing was clear, the people on this boat had been through this before, and whatever was chasing us wasn't the storm. Kalo was nearby. I yelled over the wind, asking what the hell was going on. He shook his head, pale in the flickering green light. I don't know either, just doing what the elders said. I didn't know what we were facing, but Professor Vane was clearly trying to buy time. The other boats had turned, riding the current and pulling away. Suddenly, a jolt. The boat shuddered violently. I nearly toppled overboard if Kalo hadn't caught me. Wood groaned under pressure, like bones being cracked. The bow still faced forward, but we were being pushed off course. Then, that sound, screeching, shrill. From beneath the waves, it pierced through everything, wind, thunder, fire, chanting straight into the mind. My ears rang. My balance wavered. I dared to look over the edge. The green fire still burned, a spectral wall between us and whatever lurked below. I saw shapes in the water cutting through from the reef, now driven deep beneath the surface by the flames. But not all of them were stopped. The boat lurched again, and this time I saw it. A massive hand burst from the waves, scaled, webbed with talons like jagged obsidian. It slammed into the hull. The boat groaned. But then a cry, a howl of pain from the thing in the water. I saw it clearly. The carvings along the hull, those ancient sigils, they were glowing, faint but fierce, searing into the creature's flesh like brands of burning iron. I stood frozen, heart hammering, breath short, staring at the sea boiling with fire and wind. Kalo muttered beside me, "If it weren't for the fire, we'd be down there by now." I swept my gaze across every face on the boat. Aside from the boatmaker, Professor Vane, and the two elders, no one knew what we were facing, not even me. Before the fear could fade, the sea heaved. A massive shadow launched upward, not from above, but from beneath. A dark shape, torpedo-sized, broke the surface and landed on deck. The torches had long since died in the storm. Only dim orange light from the floodlamps and the ghostly green glow from the water lit the creature now standing among us. I was the closest to it. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its shape almost human, but not. Its chest was swollen, shoulders wide. Its arms looked like knotted strands of seaweed, tangled muscle that twitched in unnatural silence. Not like gym-built strength, more like something twisted by centuries in the blackest depths. Its skin shimmered, slick and stretched, almost tearing, revealing the sinew beneath, pulsing under the slanting moonlight. It was grotesque, and yet I couldn't look away. A stench rolled over me like a wave of rotting fish baked under a dead sun, mixed with centuries-old salt and decaying kelp. I nearly gagged, not just from the smell, but from the feeling that the smell was alive, crawling molecule by molecule into my throat, into my lungs. I was afraid. The kind of fear that empties your blood into the floor. My whole body screamed run, but my legs wouldn't move. Neither could the others. Even the strongest villagers stood paralyzed, trembling, unable to speak. Then I looked into its eyes. A black, bottomless orb, no eyelid, no sclera, just a void. And in that void I fell, surrounded by whispers, whispers, whispers. It stepped forward. Each step shook the deck, as if the ship itself recoiled beneath its weight. It moved toward Professor Vane. There was no emotion in its eyes, yet I felt it. Contempt. Not for me, not for anyone specifically, but for the entire species. Even the boatmaker and the elders stepped back. In their eyes, for the first time, not just fear, but primal dread. This deep one has existed for millennia, a demigod. If we falter now, we all die. Professor Vane roared. His voice cracked like thunder and slapped us back into awareness. Then he began to chant, no, whisper, in a tongue that wasn't language but something older, a sound between prayer and curse, like the sea itself was speaking through him. The creature froze. It hissed, clawed at its head as if in pain, then raised its other hand to crush Vane. The deck shattered like paper, but somehow the old man moved. Ducking low with a speed and grace that didn't belong to someone his age. There was no retreat left. The boatmaker and the elders charged. each holding a silver dagger etched with strange symbols. They struck without hesitation, aiming for the creature's legs, as if they'd practiced this moment their entire lives. Kylo let out a battle cry, a raw scream to push back fear. He hurled his spear toward the Deep One's chest. The others followed. Knives, harpoons, handmade weapons, all aimed at vital points. And for a moment, it stopped. I, and probably everyone else, believed we had a chance. But no, it was just the eye of the storm. It struck back. Kylo, strong, broad-shouldered, was tossed like a rag doll. He slammed into the railing, unmoving. Others weren't so lucky. Its claws tore through a young man, split him in half like wet cloth. Blood sprayed across the deck and into the screaming sea below. One elder collapsed, coughing blood. In seconds, the village's finest had been butchered. Despair rose in me like a rising tide. Aside from shallow cuts around its ankles, the Deep One was unharmed. The boatmaker drew her pistol. 3 shots rang out. The creature didn't even flinch. Bullets bounced off its coral-crusted skin. Not a scratch. Professor Vane stopped chanting. He laughed, bitter, hopeless. He looked up at the swirling storm clouds above, then turned his gaze to the sea, as if waiting for something. The monster raised its arm, ready to crush his skull, and that's when I heard it. A voice, old, broken, like it was speaking from beneath 1,000 fathoms. Call its true name, Thunanad. I didn't have time to think. I tried to say the name, a name that wasn't meant for human tongues. Not with words, use your mind. Professor Vane turned, his eyes flashing. He resumed his chant, stalling for time. I shut my eyes, recalled the way the voice had pronounced it, tried to echo it in my mind. Once, twice, 3 times, all failures. Meanwhile, Vane was dodging blows that could have crushed stone. Each missed punch grazed his body by inches, death narrowly avoided. His chants were slowing the creature, barely. The boatmaker and 2 elders lunged again, striking while it was disoriented. I clenched my fists and called its name, not with my mouth but my mind. See me. Thurnag. Ilmarad. Ilmarad. Thurnag Ilmarad. The Deep One froze. It turned to me. I looked into its eyes and fell into the ocean's abyss. Whispers, visions, a once great island, warships under a blood moon, darkness, depth. A city beneath the sea. Spiral towers rising like cursed obelisks. Thousands of Deep Ones, kneeling. Further still, beings the size of buildings, and beyond them, a mountain-shaped god, watching. I screamed in my mind, trying to escape that endless drop. Vane seized the moment. He slipped a silver amulet around my neck. Something snapped, and I was pulled back into the present. The Deep One shrieked. It clutched its head, then lunged at me. Time slowed. Raindrops hung in the air. Water splashed in slow arcs. In 2 seconds, I'd be dead. There was no fighting, no stopping. Only one option, dodge. I threw my body to the side. The punch missed, shattering the railing behind me. I ran, it followed. No tactics, no thoughts, just raw instinct. A swipe, duck, a jab, sidestep, a lunge, leap back. I dodged. Again and again, each blow could have ended me. But even instinct has its limits. My reflexes slowed, my lungs burned. The next hit would be the last. A punch grazed past my ear, more than impact. It was pressure, like an explosion. My skin burned. My eardrums screamed. I looked up. City dwellers rarely look at the sky. But tonight, it was beautiful. The storm had passed. The moon was back. The amulet on my chest glowed. From it, shadows rose. Memory mist filled with something ancient. They struck the Deep One, tearing its flesh in ribbons. What blades and bullets had failed to harm, these shadows unmade. For the first time. It knew fear. It struck wildly, but the shadows didn't flinch. They swarmed relentless. The creature retreated. It leapt overboard, vanishing into a sea of green fire and darkness. Vane shouted something, others too, but their voices were distant. Warmth trickled from my nose. I touched it. Blood from my ears, my eyes, my nose. Pain bloomed like a firework. Then everything went black. In my last moment of awareness, I heard waves crashing, but not from the sea. No, from somewhere deeper, from a memory that wasn't mine.